results of the bank stress test will separate the weak from the strong, but are these stress tests focusing on the right thing? Are they credible enough to determine a bank stress? Joining us right now is Representative Darrell, Issa, Republican of California. Good morning, Congressman. Thanks for being here this morning. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Alexis.
All right, so are we really separating the weak from the strong, or have we already created the floor by which failure is not an option?
Well, we're clearly looking at the wrong things. The stress test at a time in which what we're doing is devaluing assets on the books in order to see how much more devaluing we can do and still have a entity have enough capital is essentially saying that we don't want to fix the problem we said was a problem not of the making of the banks. If you're going to look at the proper stress test, the real question is, given the capital, which we've shown a willingness to provide if it's not naturally provided, are these going concerns? In other words, do the enterprises have the ability to make a net cash flow profit? We're not asking those questions when, in fact, we know that Wells Fargo and B of A and the other entities on a going concern basis are making money. It's their one-time write-downs that are in question, and we all understand that most of those write-downs come back as the market comes back. So the government is sort of creating the only place in which they can score these banks lower in order to keep them in TARP money and keep them partially nationalized.
Okay, so your argument, Congressman, is that they do not want to see these financial institutions pay back the funds because they want to have a say in the future of the banking industry?
Absolutely. There's no question that the previous administration's Treasury Secretary forced the money on them. Now they're doing everything they can to keep these entities from getting loose from the money. And what's absurd about it is that, in fact, they're linking now the ordinary FDIC, the ordinary portion of government that we have an involvement in, they're linking the continuing of that to whether you keep the TARP money and do what we say. Again, there's no question that most of these banks are very solvent. They have a go-forward profit. In other words, every day more money is generated than spent at these banks. So there's not a risk of insolvency unless we, in fact, force it. And what we're saying to these banks is, do what we want you to do, or we'll force the insolvency the way we did on a couple of others already. And B of A, who was, I think leaked wrongly but deliberately, is such a great example of an entity which everyone is believing is fine, go forward, can get past this hurdle, is working their way out of their bad loans, but in fact on a go-forward basis is making money. They're being put in a position now where they're going to have to toe the line for this administration. And I say this administration no different than the previous administration that got them into this.
So, but wait a second, Congressman. Look, a lot of people would argue that they have needed the funds, that without some of these funds, the banking system could have been in much worse condition. Do you not credit any of the moves that have been made by this administration to shore up the capital markets?
The previous administration, and by continuing that policy, this administration said that there was a dysfunction in the global market and that we, the taxpayers, were going to put money in to stabilize the global market. We put money into American banks because that was part of the stabilization, not necessarily because they needed it, but because we said there had to be public confidence because we, the taxpayers, needed to be comfortable. Now what we've turned it from is we need you to have the money because of this global meltdown to you took the money, therefore you're culpable in the problem, and we're going to force you to do what we want you to do. Many of these things, including buying Merrill Lynch, you ask the question of, is this appropriate for government to do? And the question answers itself very quickly. We have been doing, in both administrations, things which are inappropriate for government to do.
All right, Congressman Darrell, Issa, Republican of California. As always, good speaking to you. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thanks, Alexa.
All right, guys, we're going to be right back with some of the news headlines in just a moment. Stay here. 1 second.